Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Robin Brown. I'm the CIO for Protein North America at Cargill, and I am proud to be a member of the WLIT Board of Directors. Jana Shortle, host of Breaking the News on KARE 11, is here with us today to talk about re-entering the world post-COVID, enlisting empathy and grace amidst the change, and being true to ourselves. Jana, I've had the pleasure of watching you on KARE 11 for years, and I distinctly remember the very first time I saw you on the show and thinking, wow, she's got some great energy and presence, specifically for her first day on the job. Now, whether you feel that way or not, you came across very confident. I'd love for you to walk us through an overview of your career and why you feel passionate about this topic for today's conversation.
Well, first and foremost, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. If you remember my first day on the job, kudos. I don't. I have been at KARE 11 for this December, it will be 18 years. Um, yeah, exactly. I have now worked at KARE 11 longer than I lived in my parents' house from birth to college. And so it's really kind of hard to wrap my head around that. But if I were to look back at that December of 2003, at the person who arrived here and the person who you see in this chair now, um, at their core, they're the same person in their soul. But you couldn't have found two more different people in how they became themselves. So for me, it's always educational, but a little bit painful to look back to that person because I know they struggled with a lot of things. And so their skill set was to make you think that they were the most confident person in the room.
Yes. Yes.
And to talk about that, I mean, that's work.
It
We
is.
work in a lot of different ways. We work outside the office to show whatever version we think the outside world wants to see. And I think going through all of this isolation, this pandemic, and being stripped away from work in a lot of places and a lot of spaces in your mind has changed that. And I think we're going to all re enter perhaps a little bit different than when we left.
Agreed. I think absolutely so much has changed. I mean, it's been an incredible year of shift and change, and we all had to figure out how to adapt very quickly as that
Mhm.
shift happened, and had to figure out how to work from home. And most people were lucky enough to work from home and still trying to find a way to be ourselves. It's humbling and extremely vulnerable to show people, hey, this is what my basement looks like. Or my significant other is working in the office, so I have to work from the bedroom today. That's being very vulnerable. It stripped us raw. When we before, you had mentioned that people reacted in one of two ways: to either become our authentic self or create an alternate self. Talk to me more about that.
I think that when we talk about an alternative self or kind of what I think a lot of us were in fear.
Mhm.
Me too. I still have snippets of what I remember of when we all left or when everybody else left. I didn't leave. I remember this day in March, a coworker saying, "We got to get out of here. There's too many people here." I mean, we were afraid.
Yeah.
And so I remember that part. And I think that when we all are afraid as adults, as kids, we retreat. We're primal species. And so if you're threatened, you're kind of stripped down on what do I need to do to survive? And a lot of us kind of kept the armor off because we were with the people who knew us best. And we were also still scared. Was the virus on the kitchen counter? Was it on the groceries? Was it, where is it? And at the same time, am I going to lose my job? Or am I going to lose my grandparents? Am I going to lose my parents?
Right.
Oh, I just called. What is that? Psychologically, I think that dismantled so many parts of us that we're still kind of building back together. I think what you see now, you come into this reentry for many people, how people coped with that. And if they didn't, that frustration comes out sideways. Road
Mhm.
rage, speeding, drinking, um, just anger,
Yeah.
not quite able to articulate what they just went through, and we don't even know what people went through. They could come back to work, divorce. They
Yeah.
could have lost their parents, their grandparents. They could have gotten sick and scared. You know, who knows? They could have had a kid or kids that didn't do well in distance learning, and they're
Yeah.
struggling.
Yeah. I think there was a lot of that, and as people shifted to work from home, Jana, you didn't get that opportunity to go work from home. So talk to me about what that was like when you were still in the office with hardly anyone there. And then all of a sudden, you've got the rest of your peers coming back and doing full weeks suddenly. I mean, that had to spin your world upside down just as much.
So much plexiglass, Robin. There's so much plexiglass. You just run into it everywhere you go. These little booths. Yeah.
Right.
You know, for those who know where we are, it's in Golden Valley. It's it's huge building. There's like 10 of us in it, so it was like getting locked in the mall after hours.
After hours.
So you kind of had to run. I mean, you could go to the bathroom and not close the door. It was great.
I'm sure.
I was doing yoga poses in the middle of offices. Nobody was in. There was like a putting thing. I don't even golf.
Yep.
It's fun. Uh, but it was lonely. I work in many. I've never done anything else, so I don't know what other work is like. But I work in a space where it works better to bounce ideas off of people's
Yep.
news stories. You don't know every question to ask, and also when you produce a script, you want to run it by a friend, journalist, and like, did I get this right? Is this biased? Is this favoring? Am I doing this? And there was nobody there.
Mhm.
Um, and as everybody watching this knows, the last year and a half in our community has been really hard. And there's been lots and lots of pain getting
Mhm.
plastered all over the news, not just a pandemic, but a racial reckoning. And the murder of George Floyd. I mean, that was what was on the doorstep on your paper or on your
Mhm.
newscast every day. And so for those of us putting it together, um, it was hard to do almost alone.
Yeah. No, I can't imagine that, and in your line of work, you see a lot, you see the tragedies, you see good things, right? Most of us were able to quickly pivot on the technology to keep our work moving forward through different applications and still hopefully be able to see our loved ones. But not everybody had that privilege. And I know you saw a lot of things in your line of work, Jana. Talk to us about that.
I think the blessing and curse of this job is that you meet ordinary people under extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah.
And they could be at the highest high, like Suni Lee's family going, Suni's going to the Olympics, or it's George Floyd's family. Uh,
Mhm.
and their loved one has just become the epicenter, the video of his killing shared around the world millions of times over. Balancing those two things, a therapist would not recommend it. Um,
Yeah.
but that's the call. Journalism is a calling, and I'm humbled and privileged to have the job. The part that was really hard about the work with COVID is that it really siphoned. My only way to talk to people for a while was this, and you don't talk to regular people. I can't go meet people where they are without a Zoom link. Most
Right.
of my work is done with strangers, going to where their spaces are and their places. And so when the doors all locked and the outside world became quiet, that became far more difficult to do. Um, so yeah, I mean, it just changed how we could deliver the news. I'm sure that news consumers, and many of you are on this call, like, might have been frustrated, like the news is not talking to me or my community.
Yeah.
we couldn't get to you. We had corporate rules about I couldn't go in a car with a photographer.
Yeah.
I couldn't put a microphone on you. I would have to find a stick, tape it to a microphone, and put it out like a
Mm,
fishing pole if you decided to come outside when it was 10 below zero to talk to me. So it was just like we were really limited um, into how we would even do our jobs. But
yeah.
we knew that the information, had to get out there. So as you said, we all had to learn a new set of skills and a new way to do our jobs, what's seemingly overnight. And I think the truth is, I can speak for my employer, if we would have prepared for that, like if we would have been
Yeah.
had warning signs, they would have like 16 task forces meetings and all this bibbity boppity boo. Um, it it wouldn't have gone the way it went. I think we all kicked into
Yeah.
we got to do what we got to do.
Yeah.
And in that way, you saw like real triumph in terms of
Yeah.
making it work. There's so much negativity, right? My teachers didn't do a good job with my kid in distance learning, and maybe they didn't. And but I there's a teacher upstairs who lives here. Um, she tried real hard, you
Yeah.
know, to make it work.
Well, and not all kids had the opportunity to have that technology, right? To even be able to participate in the online portion of their schools. And so I do think, it really kind of changes our perspective and, our tolerance. We all had to learn grace in a very different way because our jobs changed,
Yeah.
our atmospheres changed. So I think that's good perspective.
And I think we have to relearn it in an even
Yeah.
bigger way as we go back because we are not going back as polished people that lived in a world that didn't experience in our generation
Mhm.
a pandemic that threatened and took people's lives. A lot of
Right.
things happened in the last year and a half. The pandemic, obviously, killing of George Floyd, and then the demonstrations after that and the unrest after that. We went through a very vitriolic election season. Uh,
Yes.
Now we're in, we've been torn apart at the seams several times, and now we're coming
Yeah.
back to a workspace that's a shared space. And not all of us are practiced right now at how to
Mhm.
be patient, how to listen, how to behave
Yep.
in a meeting, how to put our pants on, um,
Yeah.
how to not put fish in the microwave in the work lunchroom because that stinks. All that stuff.
Right? It's gonna
How
be
to
relearning.
commute, factoring in that the commute takes some time.
Yes, yes. So, Jana, I follow you on Facebook because you do have some very interesting perspectives that you share, and you receive a lot of gratitude from others on things they've learned from you, and they can relate to your experiences. You do so much in the LGBTQ community. How do all of the events over the last year position you to be a more authentic leader and focus back on the community?
I think we have to, you know, change begins with us
It does.
and every aspect. And so I'm super, super blessed. I didn't expect this life. I really didn't. Um, I worked hard, sure, but a lot of people work hard. So I both, it's not a gimmick. Uh, I really enjoy people. It's why I do this job. I literally enjoy talking to strangers. It was a problem when I was 4, apparently, but turned into a lucrative career. Um, and so I genuinely do care about other people. I find them fascinating and complicated and beautiful and wonderful, each individual person. And it hurts me deeply. I to see anyone treated less than. It just does. I it's a blessing also and a curse. I I think that that's the empathy muscle that mine is rusty too because I haven't been exposed to the world as much as of late. But my partner knows like don't show me a teenage movie where nobody like where the kid gets bullied all the time. Like I know it's real, and it's
Mm,
just hard to watch. But that's the reality. And so I
yeah.
think that I want, there's I'm Jewish, and tikkun olam is how I want to live my life. I don't get it perfect, which is to leave this world better than you found it in the smallest way. Does not mean that it does not mean that I'm going to stop climate change, although I'd like to. It means little ways. And that means just being kind. The masks are off, so smile and make eye contact. And it means
Those little
stepping,
things. Isn't it nice to
yeah.
see again?
And it also means stepping up in your workplace.
Yeah.
If you overhear something said that's not confronting, but just saying, hey, let's think about that. Like maybe that wasn't the way that we should talk in an open space. If the kid's not getting
Mm,
played with, go play with the kid.
yeah.
Just
Yeah.
the little stuff. It means to me leaving the world better than you found it. Picking up trash. I mean, goodness. Like just you see a cup on the ground, pick it up, throw it away, wash your hands.
Yeah.
Little stuff.
Little stuff. Yeah. No, I think that's good. I think we all need to really rethink that as we enter back into work and what is the new normal? Because we can't go back to the old normal. It doesn't exist,
Mm-mm.
right?
No, doesn't. And
No.
that's okay.
Yes.
When that's what happens when things burn down, you rise from the ashes and build anew. Also, when you
Yeah.
go to work, don't just put your dirty dishes in the sink. There's not a magic person that just comes and washes those. It's on you.
Yes. Jana, thanks for sharing all of your perspectives. We did open it up to the audience to provide some questions for you. So are you okay with walking through some of those that had the top votes?
Absolutely not.
We're going there anyways, Jana.
Great.
All right. So the very first question is, you were very intentional about rejecting the stereotypical image dress required for women news anchors. How did you navigate that process without getting reprimanded, ostracized, or worse at Care 11?
I'm glad that you put the at Care 11 part in it, because it would be a lie to say that that didn't happen.
Yes.
Television news, all of you that are listening to this or watching Robin and I talk, you know it, you've seen it, and it's been the exact same for 50 years. Here's usually a white cisgendered male who probably played sports.
Yeah.
Here's usually a white cisgendered female who in Minnesota is probably blonde. They're
Mhm.
your news anchors. I'm not even from here, but the news anchors always fit that role. It's
Yep.
changing now, but when I started in 1999, um, I too, and the person you saw, Robin, in 2003, was absolutely adhering to the unwritten code of what a lady is supposed to be able to go out into the community and ask questions and empathize and tell stories. I just wanted to do that. And I was willing to swallow who I was and be someone else on the outside to
Yeah.
be able to do my job. And in the beginning, when I was doing that for the majority of my career, this part has only been 5 years. So
Yes.
that's the previous 15 years. But even when I was doing that, there were hints along the way. And I think the world works that way. It gives you subtle hints like, "Psst, psst, 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 that's not you." Um, because I would try to do that, and I would have bosses just remind me that like, Shortle doesn't, you're not getting it right. Remember, it's a visual medium. That's a code for you look like garbage. Um, so I make the heels higher, I did the things that women did.
Yeah.
I'm not proud of it, but I'm honest about it. I mean, we all should be, because that was just what I thought that the news medium was saying to me. So
Yeah.
by the time I became myself, and it did not happen overnight, uh, it was something that was kind of happening in parallel. Like I was being in my news world here. And then on the weekends, I
Mhm.
would look how I would look. And obviously, friends in Minnesota would be like, why do you change?
Yeah.
And I was incredulous, like, are you, I can't even believe you would ask that question out loud. What do you mean, why? Um, and then
Right.
they slowly started to get further apart the other way. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you may have heard, but like 6 years ago, when I was in rehearsals to do the show that I do now, I was off the air for several weeks, and everybody at work saw me like this. They didn't say anything. They're like, huh, you have curly hair. Huh, you wear different clothes than you do. And so once rehearsals were over, it was the night before the show started, and somebody asked, "What are you afraid of?" And usually, when I'm confronted with anything that dances towards intimacy, I make a joke. And so I made a joke, but usually there's truth in the joke. So I said, I really don't want to go back to the other side of my closet, which is the side that had all the other clothes in it. And the
Yeah.
person said, "Don't."
Wonderful.
So I didn't.
And you've never looked back, you know?
Oh, I mean, I was terrified. I
Oh,
had a
I'm
great, yeah, oh, I was terrified. I was certain that I would walk out of work that first night and there would be people there to laugh at me and beat me up.
yeah,
Because that's just what I was used to. Um,
sure.
it didn't happen. And there was an incident that happened 6 months later where it really put that to the test, which was never the intention. It was just how the world
Yeah.
worked out. Um, So eventually somebody was going to say out loud, "You can't look like that. You can't do that." And I just said, "Yes, I can."
Mhm.
And then I never looked back because then it became bigger
Good
than
for
me.
you.
It
Yeah.
wasn't about me anymore.
No, and I'm sure that was really tough, Jana, really tough. And now I look at you today and the authenticity that you have, the energy that you have when you interview people, it's amazing. Like, this is so humbling for me to sit in this seat and have a conversation with a person that is so good at this. This is not my bailiwick, Jana,
You're
but
doing great.
you do it. You are so authentic and you just yourself comes out. You bring the best in other people out, and that's the skill you have. So know that people think that of you, and that is your brand out there. And everything you've done, people get behind you, and you've now launched that type of opportunity for others to stand up as well. So you have
That's the
that,
important part.
Anna. Yeah.
Thank you.
The next question that came up from the audience. You've covered some heart-wrenching stories over your career. How do you maintain optimism and resilience day to day? Any practical tools or techniques that you could share with us?
That's a great question. I think early, and they don't really prepare you for that in journalism school, like the
Mm.
amount of trauma. I mean, we would be very similar to a paramedic, and I mean, not as in front of it, but sometimes we go to the same places.
Yeah.
Um, so we need to talk about that, like what you're dealing with. Maybe I'm the second person there and you're talking to people in raw trauma very often. Um, and that is not something that is should be normalized. And that's why, I feel like journalists have always got to like keep in the cycle their self-care, because if they do it too many times, I mean, this is just
Mhm.
psychologically proven of anybody else too, you become desensitized to
Yeah.
trauma if all you do is see trauma. You have to, because again, that's that part of the survival mechanism of you. Like, it's starting to build a cage around you because you can't possibly ingest that every single day. I didn't know that early on, because how could you know it? There's no textbook. And so that was, it's always difficult. It was a different kind then, because if you're not to that point where you've become your full self yet. And then you're just
Mhm.
inundated and I think that's a lot of what goes on too. I think that we can't expect people to just be able to bounce back all the time. We've all been through trauma in the last year, lots of it, and so people react to trauma differently. I think for me, it just gives me in terms of work, because for me, my work is my life, and every journalism
Mhm.
professor would give me an F minus for the way I do journalism. But I can't separate the two. That's just how
Now,
I
why do you
am.
say that, Jana? I'm curious.
Because the whole adage of it, right? Like the whole idea, and I think that the public has this maybe a little bit of misinformation that a journalist doesn't hold space or bias, as they like to say, that you're biased towards this or that or the other thing. And I'm like, yeah, I
Sure.
am biased towards like humans. Like I think we should all do our best, and we're a part of the world as well. So a journalism professor would like never cross the line of never cry in an interview, never care about, never say to them, well, I really wish you well, or I'm going to pray for you. Also, they never do that. You're a reporter, they are a subject. And I just think that's vulgar.
I
That's
agree. Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
And if we are not transparent as people, I mean, I'm in this for people. That's not a secret. Like, that's why I like doing it. I care about people and I like talking to them. And I want to hear their stories from them.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I don't care. I'm well up past journalism school, so it doesn't really matter. But I know, I mean, it's been publicly said
Right.
that like what I do is, really dances the line of journalism ethics. And
Yeah.
that's fine. Whatever. But anyway, to answer your question, it's a perspective thing. So,
Yeah.
which is kind of strange when you know, I think like a journalist, or I think like a person, like, oh, like my friend is putting her 2-year-old on a swing, swinging her, swinging her. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's too high. And she's like, it's a swing. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah. Well, I've met 6 families who have gone through immense trauma with their 2-year-old in a swing. That's not like what everybody thinks
Right.
about, but I do.
Yep. No, that's fair. That's fair. Jana, we probably have time for one more question from the audience.
Okay.
You meet people all over Minnesota in your work. What are some of the best lessons you've learned from your interviewees who've overcome hardship, tragedy, or loss?
I think something that's really remarkable about people, and I see it all over Minnesota and other states and cities I've worked in, is that this is common. If a person has an unthinkable to the majority population tragedy happen, they often now turn it into, over time, um, something beautiful.
Mhm.
I met a couple in St. Paul several years ago who had a tragedy in their family with their child. And then I met them 5 years later when they dedicated the playground in her name for the public. Um,
Yeah.
Small things, big things. I meet families affected by gun violence in the most horrific way. And they're the ones marching in our streets to say, make it stop. Um, that kind of thing is, you know, people are by their nature, if they're supported by people, resilient.
Yeah.
We're able to do, or as Glennon Doyle says, we can do hard things. We
Yeah.
can. We really can do hard things. And everybody's hard thing is different. And it's not the hard things Olympics.
Mhm.
Everybody's hard thing matters. And so if we keep that kind of perspective with each other, and I know it's hard, and my goodness, I have like a fuse that's about this small, and patience that small, because I want work to be excellent and I want us to serve you with
Yes.
excellence. And if there's mistakes, I get frustrated. Well, what if
Yeah.
what if my coworker that day didn't sleep last night because their 2-year-old has RSV? I didn't know that.
That's fair.
Put it in your mind that that might be a possibility. Because if you just are like, they suck, well, that don't really get us anywhere. I mean, they might, but like, it doesn't serve you and it doesn't serve them. Um,
Yeah.
so I just think that as we go back to work, and as we go back to the grocery store, and maybe as we go back to the pizza joint for the first time, or as we go on vacation, as we get on that airplane,
Mhm.
everybody's gone through hard things. Everybody's trying. And if they're not trying, it's not yours to over oh, to say, "Oh, you're a jerk. I'm going to be a bigger jerk."
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair. I think you're already probably hitting on this, but maybe what are your final closing thoughts that you want to leave us with as we move forward post COVID? Where do we go from here, Jana?
Man, we've certainly been on the bench for a while and it's time to get in the game. But take your time. Take your time. No
Mhm.
one said, you don't sit on the bench and then go run a marathon the next day. It may feel that way because you may feel overwhelmed, or
Yeah.
you may feel like, wow, some people have been in the office before me. And so I really got to get in there and show my boss what a great worker I am and how valued I am. Slow down, be yourself, because you have the opportunity right now to re-enter the world as you. You don't have to go buy no $900 suit to just like go back to the office to impress everybody. Don't do it. Don't do it. Like, what would happen if you didn't do that? Now, if you want to do that because that makes you feel good about yourself, God bless, go for it. But if you got stripped down, think about what you're going to put back on. You don't have to put it all back on that you had on before. And I think it's really freeing. For me, I put a
Yes.
lot of stuff on my exterior to make sure that I wouldn't get laughed at when I walked out into the world. And the thing is the world would have taken me this way
Mhm.
15 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
Um, but living without putting all of that on, yes, it may seem like just the exterior, but it's not. The interior becomes lighter. You get to laugh more in your interviews. And actually, I ask harder questions of people because I'm not afraid of them anymore.
Awesome.
And I think when you get to know yourself, you shed your fear that you won't be accepted. You'll never shed all of it. The Twitter trolls still make me sad. But
Yes.
when you're yourself, you don't have to like, that's all, right? You don't have to at the end of the day be like, oh, I would have done this and I had this. It's very simple. It's just like we teach our kids. Be kind, do your best, see everybody, and go to bed and try again the next day and leave the world better than you found it if you can.
Love it. Great messages, Jana. Thank you so much for being here with us today and for sharing all of your different perspectives, your journey with us. I mean, your insights to your lessons learned have given us, at least for me too, a lot to reflect on in our own lives and how we can truly re enter this world post COVID. We've got to think about how we enlist empathy and grace amidst all of this crazy change that's happened and yet still be true to ourselves, find that authentic self. So I appreciate your creative mind, Jana, and your exceptional leadership. Just thank you for being here with us today and being so vulnerable. Now, I do have one question left for you. For those of you who might not have heard your great news, would you like to share with the audience?
I got a 2-for-1 last night at Dairy Queen. That one?
That's not the news I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, I'm getting a new roommate. Um,
Yes. Yes.
yeah, I'm getting a roommate in December. We are currently experiencing the joys of snoring during pregnancy. My partner is pregnant. We're
Yes.
due in December, and I'm super excited to ask a kid questions. That's my own kid, because I'm used to just asking your kids questions. I am very, very awakened to uh, all of the things that babies need.
Yes.
Who knew? Somebody's
Yes.
like, "Did you buy shoes?" I'm like, "Shoes? What do you mean?" So I'm learning all that. So any parenting advice, feel free to give my way. But yeah, we're super excited. We're due in December. Um, we're getting married in September. God,
You're
2021.
doing a
Let's
big
get it up. Hey,
great.
it was all
Bring it
postponed.
on.
Yeah, COVID put everything on the bench, so we're coming out swinging.
I love it. Oh, I'm so excited for the both of you, and you're going to be amazing parents. I'm excited to hear the stories. So keep sharing your stories, keep posting on Facebook and all forms of social media because we love hearing from you. So, again, Jana, thank you so much for being here with us today. Really appreciate everything we talked about.
Robin. Have a great one.
Thank you. Now I'd like to turn it over to Jade Denson from Mintech to close out our program for the day. Over to you, Jade.